We're here. We're live. Welcome to a brand new Poker Live podcast. My name's Joey from Money Chicago. Joey, before we get into it, I'm having a podcast this Wednesday with a young woman who a lot of people have been asking me to have on since this summertime, since they followed my Instagram, and that is young Brazilian Viviane Saliba, one of the up and coming poker players in the entire world. She just got signed with 888. She plays the great game of Pot Live in Omaha. And I love her. Whatever can I say? Shout out to Viviane. That'll be on Wednesday, and then my show Out of Line at the Bike every Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time on Live with the Bike Twitch channel and YouTube channel. And I don't know. That's all I got, man. Joining me today on the podcast, guys, is a young man who we had on earlier this year. It was a great episode. I think a lot of people. It was one of their favorite episodes. A lot of wisdom was shared on there. Since then, he's been hard on the grind. He's been working hard with his business, Solve for Why. He's been playing in some televised cash game streams as well on Poker Central for the Poker After Dark and for Live with the Bike. And he's been recently involved in a little bit of controversy. I don't know if we'll call it controversy, but me and Matt were talking about this on Live with the Bike last week about poker WWF a little bit of World Wrestling Entertainment, and I guess Doug decided to go fucking turn that up to a full extreme with this past couple of days here. So, but yeah, man, we're joined by my buddy Matt Berkey. Matt, what's going on, man? How's it going this morning for you?
Man, I was afraid that I wasn't gonna live up to the intro after you went with Viviane first. It's like you can't really lead there, but you brought it back around. You got me in there.
Well, Viviane. Whatever, man. I'll shout to Viviane. But yeah, man, how's things going with you, buddy? How's it going?
Oh man, it's good. It's busy. It's stressful. It's winter. It's cold here. It feels like Pittsburgh without the snow.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, me and Matt actually are in the same town. We're probably 10, 15 minutes from each other. But yeah, I'm just all discombobulated lately in my life. So we're trying to make things work here. So we relied on the wonderful internet here to make this podcast happen. And yeah, are you playing on the Poker After Dark this week? That lineup looks pretty good. It looks a little better than last week's lineup, I gotta say. How'd you get in this game? What's the lineup look like here?
These are my people. Yeah, I mean, I don't think the lineup's like particularly great. It's Seaver, Lamb, Kruk, myself. Who else? Actually, I'm looking right at it. Yeah, Bub Wright, and Garrett and Young Wang. I don't know who that is. Mystery
Listen,
man.
I got a theory, Garrett. I got a theory, and I don't want to get out of line. No, I'm learning Chinese. Shout out to Ni Hao, motherfucker. Shout out to all my Chinese people out there. But I don't know. I don't know. Whatever, man. But it sounds like a pretty good lineup. But obviously, last week,
it's a live
there was
lineup.
something that happened, and then Doug Polk. Shout out to my boy Doug. Doug made a video about there. Put you in the thumbnail. Kind of called you out a little bit. So I guess kind of we can go into that. We'll lead up with that, and then we'll go from there, because I know that's what a lot of people have been asking me about and asking my opinion about it. So I figured, you know what, let's just talk with Matt a little bit about it and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, it happened. There was supposed to be a 204 game for Live at the Bike. I wasn't all that confident that it was really ever going to run, but I tried to prepare accordingly, and the games the week prior got big. I didn't realize, I guess I didn't realize first that Garrett was playing, which I'm glad he did. I really enjoy playing with him as a whole. He makes the environment really gambly, which is great. But, when I was planning this trip, I was supposed to play 25-50, 25-50, 51, and 2-4. And I figured, how much could I really get hurt in two 25-50 games with a bunch of social media stars and a decent 51 game. And I lost like 110,000 after the first two sessions of 25-50, which were ultimately, 25-50, 100, 200 with a infinite ante. So yeah, I just didn't have enough money to play the 2-4. I alerted Ryan about it on stream Tuesday. You were in the booth with me.
Yeah.
And he didn't seem to be too concerned with it. I figured, there's probably people wanting to play this game. But, I've been around high stakes long enough. It's like the lineup just continually kept deteriorating. It started with a lot of business people and fun players and ended with a bunch of killers, which, hey, that's going to happen. I get it. That's the high stakes realm. I'm happy to play in those games. It's just another opportunity to play 2-4, which is a bigger deal to me than lineup choosing. But I'm certainly not going to play against a bunch of killers with what ultimately works out to less than 100 big blinds once we throw in a big ante. So, the only I don't care about Doug's video, like whatever. It is what it is. I'm not really offended by it at all. The only thing that like kind of got me was the, I guess, partial truth of how big the game actually was. Like everybody saying like, oh, you knew you were playing 200, 400. Why weren't you prepared? It's like, well, I was, but I didn't know I was playing 100, 200, 3 sessions prior, and that the 200, 400 was going to turn into basically 500, 1K.
Yeah, like, I said on Twitter afterwards, I was like, listen, I aspire to one day, say I'm going to go play a 200, 400 game and only have I aspire to only have $100,000, have to quit a lineup with a bunch of really good players out there. And obviously, Doug made that video. He talked about, this has kind of been going on in some capacity with Poker Central shows, which I feel like this case is much different than some of the cases I know of from Poker Central and what happened with that show. When he kind of talked about being a problem, and in a way, I do think it is something that is starting to be a problem with some of these lineups getting, sort of, I guess, getting agreed upon, or people agreeing to play and they don't play. But I do think the circumstance that happened with Live at the Bike was a little bit different. And you mentioned it was super high stakes game. It was a game where even if you had 100,000, you probably want to have a little more just in case you wanted to rebuy and whatnot. And I guess the rebuttal some people said is, well, if he knew that was going to happen, if he agreed to play in it, wouldn't he have lined up more money potentially? And I think that's something that some people have been asking about.
Yeah, that's hard. It's not easy to just move $500,000 from place to place.
Matt, they think it's easy. Matt, they think okay. I don't know. That's what they think it works like.
When I was texting with Feldman, like asking if he had somebody who could facilitate swapping out Aria chips, he's like, no, but just bring cash. And I'm like, what do you think? I just have like a briefcase with $500,000 in it. I'm just gonna like lug it to LA with me in a car? Like that's not how this works. But yeah, it's challenging. It's a lot easier to play it quote unquote home than it is on the road, especially when the people that I regularly play with that I might have borrowing power with weren't around. So I'm sure I probably could have like really put myself out there and asked some of the guys in the game. But from what I could tell, everybody else was on pretty limited funds as well. And I don't think anybody was really in a position to just like be firing 100K my way and then just like hope that I'm going to pay. Not that I wouldn't pay, but.
Right. I know what you mean. I mean, it's a weird circumstance anytime, you sort of know the guys, but you don't really, it's not like that sort of relationship. You're like, hey, let me get 100K, or let me get this, let me get that. So, I mean, I guess, you could have asked and maybe it could have happened, but I can understand the being a little bit reserved to want to do that. But I guess, so did you watch Doug's video? Did you get a chance to see it?
Yeah, you asked me to be on the podcast before I even knew the video was out. And then it was like I saw my tweets and it had 100 mentions. I'm like, something happened. So I watched it. I thought the intro was fantastic. He's really, really good at what he does. I think that like from a business standpoint, he has a lot figured out. The actual video itself, it's like, whatever. I could pick it apart. There's a lot of contradictions. I just don't care. It's literally one of those things where it's like, I'm not a man who spares my fucks easily, and I just don't have any to give for something so trivial.
So overall, I guess the idea behind the video, do you agree with that in terms of it being a problem or something that's an issue with these televised or these live stream high stakes cash games, and something that moving forward, it might be good to start to, call out now, and then maybe in the future this won't happen with those type of shows? Because, I think people travel different places and stuff like that, which definitely I think there's a lot of merit to that. I think for that game specifically, Dan Smith fly it in there, and Jungle Man, who Jungle Man was doing Jungle Man type things, and he went to town there too. And obviously, if this keeps happening, well, then in the future we might not have a lot of these games because people are going to be, they're not going to want to go here or go there if there's a scheduled game and then it doesn't happen.
I mean, you have to look at it from the incentives. I think he kind of approached it from a very me-centric point of view of like, I've had a Poker After Dark canceled on me, and I flew out here for this game, and, kind of framing it in a way of like, this happened to other people as well. Everybody who flew out there, with the exception of Danmer, is from Vegas. We all could have played here, and we all had plenty of money. Why doesn't that game run every single day of the week? It's like, some of us would be happy to play, whatever. But the whole thing is it's all incentive, right? And this was the one thing that was never really examined, is the incentive-based aspect of it. And we keep calling it televised poker, but like, you know, I get the TVs moving to live streams, but this isn't the same as Poker After Dark on NBC. And so it's not a shock that there's going to be a lot of hiccups.
Bang, bang.
But, you know,
old school there.
Right. But, you know, it's like when you look at it like, oh, well, one of my Poker After Darks was canceled and this Live at the Bike game didn't go, and that sucks for me. But who does it really suck for, right? It sucks for the brand. It's a worse look for Poker After Dark and Live at the Bike to have to scramble and figure out what to do in these spots. So, you know, they're heavily incentivized to get these lineups together and make sure they stick. And, you know, it's an impossible task. Because in the past, you had TV as a driving force and you had sponsorship and the players were paid and everybody had a reason to be there, right? Now, the only thing that these streams can really offer are soft lineups and promotion. But outside of Doug and myself, nobody in that game is looking to build their brand. And even for the two of us, it's not the biggest platform in the world. Like, I would definitely say Doug is bigger than that platform. I'm not saying it won't help him, but it's like, you know, he's already getting hundreds of thousands of views on his YouTube page. Doing a simple live stream is going to help facilitate that, but it's not going to like grow him 10%. Now, it's probably a bigger deal for me, but we have to look out for ourselves at the end of the day too. Like, we can't just be putting ourselves in harm's way for 6 figures in order to get a couple extra minutes on the internet.
I don't know, Bert. Listen, Berkey, the fans out there, they want to see blood, man. You got to be putting your life on the line. Come on, you got to be. You got to put your life on the line. You got to put the money up there. You don't agree with that take?
No, I love it. Like, let's bleed. Fine, let's have a ladder match. I don't care. Like, you know, to somehow challenge the I duck tough lineups is like just completely and utterly ludicrous. And it's fine. Like, I get it. There are different circles in this community, and the online circle is very in tight with one another, and then the live realm is very different, right? And that's fine. I think just acknowledging the differences and realizing that like there isn't a lot of overlap is reasonable. But it's like if you talk to the guys that are playing in the lineup tonight, I don't think any of them are going to say like, oh yeah, Berkey, he game selects, right? Like, that's his thing. And you know, at the end of the day, it's just like life happens, and it's going to continue to happen. And that's the biggest problem, right? That's the biggest challenge that these promoters are going to face. Brent's one of my best friends, and I know the struggles that he goes through with Poker After Dark, right? Because the fun players want everything in their favor in order to even consider inconveniencing themselves to play. And the good players want a reason to be there, right? It's like you're exposing your strategy, you're putting yourself out there for the world to see, et cetera, et cetera. And there just isn't the same incentives. They don't align anymore. So this whole live stream thing, it's a really tough racket. And, you know, for Ryan, it's like this is the first time he's ever tried a game this big. And it's like, I wish he would have leaned a little more heavily on those of us that play these stakes a little bit more often. Like, you know how many times I've seen a 200, 400 game crumble? You know how many times I get text messages from JRB or the like, and it's like, oh, so-and-so's in town, we're going to have this big juicy game. And then it's just like, hey, it never happened. Like, no one showed. That's the racket, right? That's the business. The high stakes community is very small, and it's driven by a very finite amount of money. So you kind of have to have contingency plans in place. And that's like the biggest challenge these promoters are going to face. It's like, you know, would I have done things differently in their shoes? For sure. Like, promote the 200, 400 game, but I would have an entire lineup of 25, 50 ready to roll just in case. It's like, you have to. You just have to ensure that you protect your brand at the end of the day and that you're ready to roll out a product rather than be left scrambling and fire off like, you know, a Facebook Live or a Twitter Live and throw some people under the bus and hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. I'm happy that it went how it went because we got to see some Potlam in Omaha, and honestly, I did not want to watch no more Nolan Hold'em last week. So I think I may have been one of the only happy people with the outcome that happened last week because that turned into 5,100. And overall, I thought the week was very well done by Live at the Bike, by Feldman. Shout out to Feldman. I think he, like you said, he is new to this. It's just kind of the first time trying to put some things together. I think you learn from your mistakes and from Doug's aspect of things, I can understand his side of things too. You know, he's obviously wanted this game to go. He wants to play really high stakes. He kind of grinded out these lower stakes games, as he might say, throughout the beginning of the week. And then, okay, I get to play these big games, these high stakes. And then, it doesn't happen. So he's disappointed. It's happened to him before.
But that's on him too, right? It's his week. He's as much of a host as Feldman is at that point. So get the game together, right? Who are you bringing together, right? I can get an invite to the big game anytime I want if I can bring a fun player with me. It's the way the world works. And I think it's time that we all start taking our own personal responsibilities and trying to help grow the community rather than just finding a way to finger point and ensure that we're on the moral high ground and can take these really strong stands. Nothing was gained from this, right? Yes, he shined a light to something that's happening, but along the way, he also alienated a lot of people who may be interested in facilitating these games that don't want a video made about them being poked fun at. And that sucks because now the landscape gets tougher and tougher. This is exactly what happens in online, right? Seat scripting, all these micro edge seekers, all these things that will drive the loose money out. This is no different, right? You have to cultivate a certain environment. You have to keep the gamble high. You have to, and just, working in straddles and making the stakes bigger, that's not gambling. It's not gambling when you're dissecting every single play that every single person makes. Gambling is, it's chatting up the fish sometime or anybody. Sometimes it's just being quiet and letting them stew and do whatever. It's I know I probably don't come off that great on streams because I'm not overly chatty, but I continually get thrown into lineups where I'm very, very unfamiliar with the people. I rarely know any of these people personally that I'm playing with outside of when I play with Rast or Kuhn. Most of these guys I have little to no experience with, and it's fun to try to get to know them. But it's difficult also at massive, massive stakes to pick apart their life story.
So I guess overall, would you, from the experience you had live with the bike last week, from playing and from commentating, would you say it was an overall good experience? Or do you think moving forward, I guess from what ended up happening, does that make you hesitant to want to play in something like that again? Or would it depend on the lineup? Or
no,
how has your viewpoint changed on that?
Yeah, it's never going to deter anything that I do. I'm not talking from a me point of view. I'm talking holistically, right? So it's I'm in this for way different reasons. I really enjoy growing a business. I really love poker, and I don't really see it's difficult in a zero-sum game to find worth, right? So I think a lot of us who are conscious of this are trying to provide it the best way possible. And that's a lot of the reason why I developed the business is because I want that proof of concept to see if I can move laterally onto something bigger. And I don't know if I can. Who knows? I'm trying to figure it out. But it starts here, right? I think this goes from a zero-sum game to something more important when we're able to start on our own home front and begin to grow the community in a positive way, in whatever capacity that is, right? Whether it is always being ready to play in big games, which is pretty impossible to hit 100 or to bat 1,000 with. But then just taking responsibility when you fuck up, it's something that we all should do a lot more of, and I'm just as guilty as the next. Whatever. These streams are challenges. Live at the Bike is amazing. I think it's a great product. I think Ryan is sitting on a gold mine. I think he will find his sweet spot and just absolutely crush it. And I think that this will be a big learning experience. He may not have realized it in the moment because he's close with Doug, he's close with Garrett, and these guys are these players ready to play at any time. He took on the world with this, right? Nobody else would even consider facilitating a 200-400 game on live stream right now. And that's a pretty big deal. He's been head there for less than a year. That's that's a massive. Could you imagine if Stones Live just tried running a 200-400 game next week because the TD contacted me once or twice? It's madness, man. Yeah, no, that's not bang bang.
You know who I could think run a 200-400 game? I think I could run a 200-400 game. I'm thinking about this more. I'm thinking about the skills that I think it might take to get a 200-400 game down. The players.
Yeah.
I think I get a 200-400 game going this week. I don't know. I think I could. It might be a great game in Omaha. Every time I put together a game, you mentioned that it actually made an interesting point in here, which talked about whether this is relevant to what happened last week or not, but you mentioned kind of Doug being Doug's week, and maybe Doug should look to get certain players or bring in some fun players. And I think some people in the chat said, they said what he was talking about, but I guess it's not a bad idea if you are one of these guys that does play high stakes regularly, if you can potentially bring a certain player to the game, whether it's a Poker After Dark game, whether it's a Live with the Bike game, whether it's a Poker Night in America game, whether it's fucking Stones Gambling, they decide to do a higher stakes game like that. That might not be a bad idea, rather, to do as a player in the game. Not only ensures you get in the game, but it does ensure that the game is going to go down. So that could be something for people to think about moving forward. Because I mean, just on a smaller scale, when I put together Pot Limit Omaha games, I bring the fun players to the game. I'm bringing guys like a Doug Polk to the game. I'm bringing guys that don't even play PLO very often in the game. They're drinking. Sure. It's one of their first times playing. And I don't know. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of the way I like to do it. So.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to pass the buck here. I'm not trying to say that like this game failed because of Doug. But what I am saying is that like, there's a lot of moving parts in the high stakes world, and I'm saying that like it's his week. If he wants a 200-400 game to run, bring $1 million to make sure that everybody in the game is facilitated, because we are all traveling and it's not that easy to move money, right? And all this falls on us too. It's like, I could have reached out, but like we don't have that kind of relationship, whatever. My whole point is that like there's a reason why certain people are staples in the community, right? There's a reason why Robo gets invited to the best games in the world. He's the bank. He's a facilitator, right? He leads with value. And that's the thing. It's like if you are going to approach somebody and ask them for some sort of exchange and you're offering no value in return, now you're just asking for a massive favor. And you have to be a pretty special person to get these big favors pulled off, right? So first of all, that's why I wouldn't ask Doug to borrow, because I'm not providing any value in return unless he sees me as like a massive spot, in which case, okay, fine, then he should lend to me. But it's the same thing for these streams, right? It's like, like I said, TV in the past, they were paying the players, you were getting national TV time, like you could build your brands off of that, etc. Well, when that starts to disappear and these lineups get tougher and tougher because they're losing the player pools of fun players to the private games, etc. Well, now what value are they really offering, right? They're just coming to you and saying, hey, we have a place to facilitate a really high stakes game. Now, it's not going to be exactly action packed, but take it or leave it. It's like, okay, well, you're basically asking for a favor at that point. You're basically saying, like, would you please play on my stream so that we can get enough eyes on this to still be an entity? And that's a tough business plan, and it's the same for us, right? It's like, if we want to get into the good lineups, we have to provide value. And everybody understands that intrinsically. Everybody says you need to be a character on TV. You need to talk more. You need to dress a certain way. You need to present yourself in a certain manner. Right. So what they're saying is you need to provide and lead with value as to why you are a person worthy of putting on stream. And I think that gets lost in these conversations. People forget that, right? People just start to assume that, like, well, this company has a reputable name, or this player has a certain name in the industry, so they're all, they're marketable, or they're worth playing for, etc. And at the end of the day, like, we end up with things like the GPI, where nobody ever saw the value. They were just gambling, right? It's this guy says, hey, come be a part of teams and play in these sports, or in the sport-like atmosphere. I'm going to sportify poker, etc. It's like, okay, cool. What do I get out of it? Well, you just have to trust the process. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a really big deal. It's like, okay, you're asking me for a big favor.
I guess I missed it. I did miss a bang bang there. It's actually GPL, but whatever. Shout out to Global Poker League. Shout out to Global Poker League India. Shout out to Global Poker League China. Ni hao to all my Chinese people out there watching in the chat right now. Shout out to my boy Alex Dreyfus, aka Esports Man, aka Crypto Man, aka GPL Man. So I guess big takeaways from this. What are my big takeaways from this? My big takeaways from this are a 200-400 game is a tough game to get put together. My big takeaways from this are Doug Polk should start his own regular casino. Start a casino. I think Doug could do anything. I think Doug should start a casino, get his own home game going there, get his own game going there all the time, and bring the players. I'm just thinking about random ideas in my mind right now, but So I guess is there some sort of I guess ill feelings on your side when you think about Doug now from the incident that happened here? Or are you willing to play with him in the future, or sort of how does your stance change, or how does your viewpoint change on Doug and what he's doing?
No, my viewpoint's the same. I think he's like really, really, really good at what he does. I think that, it's all strategic. I think, I don't know what his plans are. I would expect him to be pivoting out of poker sooner than later, just by the trajectory that he seems to be on. But he gets it, man. He gets marketing. He gets what drives views. He understands, the fastest route to making a buck. And that's going to serve him really, really well in business. Those are all my weaknesses. I generally am not motivated by that kind of stuff. I care probably too much about, building something that's like long lasting and community based. I probably put way too much emphasis on individuals rather than on volume and numbers. But, again, I think that's why, like, I've always gravitated towards the live realm, and he's probably always gravitated towards online. They're two different beasts. One is an interpersonal psychological warfare between people looking each other in the eyes and exchanging, some form of communication. The other one is mass volume of skill edges. So it's just a totally different approach. I've never had a voluminous approach to poker. And I can't really say that like I built a business model that's seeking out 100,000 viewers either. I've just always been a quality over quantity kind of person.
Felt like some bang bangs in there. I don't know.
It's not.
No bang, no way.
No, I genuinely think that he's a really, really good businessman and will be incredibly successful.
Well, I think we're gonna have. I forgot this week was Thanksgiving, Matt. I don't know how this is possible, but I literally forgot because Doug messaged me the other day. He said Doug's actually he's got a surprise, and it's unrelated to this particular topic. But I'm not happy about it, guys. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not happy about this, and I think we're gonna be doing a podcast on Friday afternoon about it. On Black Friday, I think it's called Black. Isn't that what is the Friday called? Black Friday, Matt? Is that what it's called? Like the shopping day or something like that?
Yeah, it is. It is indeed.
Man, I'm going shopping, man. No, I'm kidding. I'm not. But I think we're going to be doing that on Black Friday, and he's got something he's going to be premiering. And like I said, guys, I've known about this for like a week or two. Shout out to Caitlin. They put this together. And when you guys see this, there's just disrespect on a lot of different levels to the great game of Pot Limit Omaha. So that'll be going on Friday. And yeah, that's all I got to say about that. So, Andreas, we had a couple of questions from the chat about this subject, because I know a lot of people out there have been asking me about this subject. A lot of people have been messaging me about it, and additional other things. So I'll take some, and then we're going to move on from this one. Andreas Stelbach says, do you guys have any inside info about a high-stakes TV cash game in Asia televised? Mixed games are fun for players and adds value. What are you talking about, Andreas? One of the worst questions I've ever seen in my life. Matt, the second part. Do you have any inside info on any sort of high-stakes televised cash game in Asia, Matt?
No, I don't. No idea.
Okay. I don't either. No. Okay. I don't have any actual inside on this as well. Have you heard about this coin poker site, Matt? You heard about this thing, this cryptocurrency coin poker site that I think a lot of the Poker Stars guys are behind. Tony G's something with it. Have you seen anything about this at all recently?
No, the only one I knew of was Virtue, that was trying to launch as a proof of Ethereum. I assume that this is like ICO based, right?
Yeah, I see. I don't know what stuff means, but I just saw the announcement for it. I looked at the team and the board behind it. I think Michael Josum's on there. He used to work for security for Poker Stars, and he's been a staple of the security community in poker, online poker, for a long time. And a bunch of their names I recognize were behind it. Tony G and Poker News are kind of pushing behind it too. And then Virtue Poker, Phil Ivey, who I know I think he's a cryptocurrency expert. He's added to the Virtue Poker thing too. So I've been trying to figure out what the fuck those things are, and I don't really know much about that. So I guess I'm either perhaps talking to JMO about it to get a really, I guess, good idea of what's going on behind it. But it seems like these cryptocurrency poker sites are like making a push towards something.
Yeah, I mean, I met with Virtue a few times. That's a long story, but the way I understand it is basically it is kind of like an interesting approach. So it would be peer-to-peer, and it would be decentralized, obviously. But I think what's most attractive of it is, or at least from their standpoint, is that there are no servers. So your money's not like being held in like a player bank, like what happened with Full Tilt, where they have to segregate their funds, et cetera. It's all just being held in your wallet, in your crypto wallet, whatever. So I think like all that's really attractive, but the problem is the barrier of entry is really, really high when attempting to educate the mass populace on crypto, right? It's like you're a part of a community that's pretty well versed in crypto, and even still, there's a lot of gray area. So like when you're trying to breach the umbrella that is both cryptocurrency and the poker community, and you have these barriers up along the way where you have to be educating people and making it accessible and somehow getting them on the platform, it's a really, really, really big challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know exactly what it means or what it's all about. I don't know how it works. I don't know how I learn. I guess I probably learn by just reading more about it and looking more into it. But yeah, I imagine the barrier to entry is going to be quite high for. I would assume so, but you never know. I think that it makes a lot of sense to get into the cryptocurrency poker related type of space right now while it's sort of getting hot. It's building up. There's so many fucking coins. I honestly, dude, I need to really take some time to learn more about it. Are you familiar with just crypto in general, or because it seems like every poker player now is, sort of becoming a crypto enthusiast / expert?
That's a good way of putting it. I'm an enthusiast. Yeah, I understand the technology loosely, and I'm comfortable being long on Bit. But yeah, I definitely don't know enough about finance or crypto for that matter to like start trading or start shorting or anything else. I know that they're gonna what are they doing? They're starting to release futures on cryptos soon, I think. At least on Bitcoin, I'm pretty sure. So there's gonna be just like a whole sub market to this market. It's like I just don't know enough, I guess. But it's something that I think it's important that we should educate ourselves on. I think that there's a good chance we're staring at a movement that could create generational wealth, which, it's something that we've greatly lacked. My whole life, it was always preached to me, like, make your money work for you, don't work for your money, that type of old adage. And it's like, yeah, that's easy for you to say, Grandpa. You had Coca-Cola stock to invest in whenever you were coming out of the war. And,
bang, bang.
Like do well for yourself. And it's like your parents tell you that. It's like, yeah, sure, stick all your money in a savings account where you guys were making 5 to 10%. It's like we don't get anything. So our generation hasn't really seen any sort of like reasonable return investments. We've seen the market crash, we've seen the housing market crash, we've seen the .com bubble. There's been a lot of financial peril throughout the course of our 20 to 30 years in this earth. And this may be the first move away from all of that, where it's kind of decentralized, that we have a shot at being the pioneers on the forefront of something that may last a long, long time.
Yeah, I feel like myself, it's something that I really want to start learning more about as soon as I can. I think everyone out there probably should do the same. I think when you start seeing Facebook posts from people that like have no idea what any of this stuff is, and they're like, all right, Bitcoin, and you're like, mom's asking you about Bitcoin, it might be time that, that's when it's starting to get really mainstream. That's when it's something that, really has a chance to be something that's huge for the foreseeable future. But I am anticipating I know there's been some scandals and some scams in the past with, like the stock exchange taking all the money. I think something crazy is going to happen. I think it's inevitable for something fucking just insane to happen. And I don't know what it's going to be, but I can't say I'm excited for that to happen, but I'm very curious to see exactly what that is and what that looks like.
Yeah, there's only limited ways to protect yourself right now, and the most common one is just getting a cold storage wallet and getting it offline. If people find a way to somehow, I guess there's like really no easy way, but anything's possible. It's just we're dealing with technology, right? So anytime you're dealing with technology, there's always a back end and kind of like a backdoor. Like that was the first thing we learned when we started coding, is that like, you kind of always have to create the backdoor workspace so that you can get into areas that other people can't. And as long as that's the case, which it should forever be the case, because these things are all man-made, it's just likely that there are going to be people who are examining the easiest way to exploit the masses. Oh, yeah. So, I think like as the technology grows, this will become less and less of a problem. But right now, we are really in the wild, wild west, and I could definitely see more cyber attacks happening to Bitcoins and exchanges. And there's a lot of money to be made, and the scarcity factor, especially with now, like you're saying, like when your mom starts asking about crypto, that it started to hit the mainstream. Now all of a sudden it becomes something that's like greatly sought after.
Shout out to my mom, Anoparentic1, aka Psycho60, aka P60. She's working hard back home. She's hitting the gym. She's getting after it. Shout out to her. She wants to come on a podcast and talk about why weed should be legalized, I believe. I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not. But big shout out to my mom for doing things. So I don't know why that idea came to my mind. I just been seeing this. I saw the poker site. I saw Phil Ivey's name attached to something. So I feel like, and I made a video about the state of online poker and how fucked up it is. And I know you're not super familiar with kind of what's been happening with online poker right now, but it's always kind of been in this weird place, but I feel like it's even in a weirder place now with a lot of these sites that popped up where you basically play on the site through a middleman. And have you ever been approached to play some of these sites where you play in credit a lot of times too, or you work through somebody in China or something like that or whatever? Have you been approached to play in these sites before?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I was playing on Poker Fishes for a little while. So yeah, I mean,
I thought you had a thought. I thought you were pausing to put together a thought on something.
It's shady. it's just shady.
That's what I thought. That's why I thought you were pausing. You're like, I'm gonna. Yeah, I agree.
I just wasn't sure, how far I could throw someone under the bus, I guess. But basically, I didn't have a great experience on there. I think it's probably legit, but there are just so many avenues where it could possibly not be that I wouldn't recommend it.
So Trey Bright said a site name has finally been revealed. Trey, I'm going to tell you some fucking sites. I'll tell you some sites. Name a country. I'll give you a couple sites, Trey. All you got to do is ask me, man. Come on. I'm ready to give away some of this. I'm ready. I got to tell you guys how it works, all right? But I got to say, Matt, from playing on these sites, it's one of the best options right now for medium to high stakes online poker for the most part.
It was the softest game I've ever lost all my money in.
Yeah, there are some pretty soft games. That's true, right? Yeah. And so I guess when you play on that site and you don't play too much online, but you play in those games because that's how the games are, what's your takeaway from that? Do you think there's something happening in the games? Do you think there's some cheating, colluding? What's sort of your viewpoint on them?
I'm sure that there's collusion going on, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, I guess I don't know. It depends to what level it's going on. If you have 3 people sitting in a room and you're only playing a 5-handed game, then obviously that's pretty bad. But from what I understand, I heard that the software of those things are set up such that money's just distributed via coolers. So the algorithm, and I don't know how true this is, but I've actually heard multiple people tell me this.
Allegedly,
yeah. Allegedly, the algorithm is set up for action. So you'll see set over set more often than you really would in a normal distribution and things along those lines. It's I think the players are bad enough where it's okay, I mean, maybe I can overcome that, but I don't know, man. It was the struggle. It was a struggle to win all the money effortlessly and then just get cooled off over and over and over again.
So I got a big point behind this. That's why I'm asking about this, is because if we can get to a point in online poker where we get past this, where when we play on a site like this and when we lose, we have it in the back, we have to think about it, right? Is something going on? I feel like for a long time with online poker, that wasn't necessarily the case with a big site like PokerStars. And that's why, honestly, I do still think PokerStars is one of the best options to play on. While there is certain things that may or may not happen on there, I still think overall it's going to be a safe environment. Whereas a lot of these other sites that pop up, and even the undergrounds, I guess I don't say underground, but the Bovada, Ignition, America's Card Room, sites like that. Even Party Poker too. Shout out to Party Poker. They're doing a lot of good things as well. But I do think that you don't really have that sort of, I guess, worry. Am I getting cheated? Is something happening with the software? Is something happening with the players? Is someone that's super using on this site? And I think that's what really sucks about online poker right now. And that was my main sort of thing behind the video, was that some of these best options are also sites where you really do have to think about that, and you do worry about that. And I think it turns away so many players, even if it's true or not, it turns away a lot of players that otherwise would really enjoy the experience of playing online. And, maybe if we can ever get to a point, and hopefully these cryptocurrency sites, maybe they provide something like that with how it's set up. And that's sort of my hope for the future of online poker, whether, I'm being incredibly optimistic when I have no reason to be or not, I'm not sure. But that's the point I hope to get to, is that if Matt wants to go play online a little bit, you don't got to, if you lose to bad players, you don't got to worry about, all right, I'm getting fucked somehow, or I'm not going to play again. And I know a lot of other people out there just feel the same, because they've talked to me about it.
Yeah, I actually think what I know about Virtue, I think that their security monitoring system, or the way that they go about making sure the site is secure, is really, really interesting and probably innovative moving forward. I'm pretty sure this is in their white pages, so it's public knowledge. It's not that big of a deal. But basically, they use a judiciary system similar to how people mine coins in crypto. And basically what it is if you're a quote unquote judge, then your machine is just constantly going through hand histories, making sure that everything's on the up and up. And it all records to, I think they're using Ethereum. So it's probably, no, maybe they do use the ledger for this. But whatever, it all records, and the computers communicate with one another. And anywhere there's a discrepancy, they immediately have the ability to go back and examine. I think that's all really good. I think that it can definitely move that way. But again, it's you're always dealing with technology, and people are just too incentivized to seek edges. And, something as innocent as seat scripting, to me, is very much so kind of like cheating, I guess, right? When the sites were created, it wasn't with the idea that these micro edges could be sought. And sure, somebody just beat the other person to it, but now that they exist, it's just furthering the decline of the online environment, right? Same thing with HUDs and stuff like that, data mining and all these things. Nobody anticipated it when the technology first came to be, but now that it exists, we're just kind of accepting it, and that sucks. Obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I really see poker continuing in the online realm as a massive, massive challenge, where on the live realm, I think that it just exists much more naturally, and you can avoid the apocalyptic wasteland. You just can't do these things live. People just have the ability to look around, see their surroundings, determine if they're in danger or not, and then leave. Mm-hmm. Including and cheating and all that stuff. It's so much bigger of a challenge live.
It's kind of sounding and this is an idea a lot of people brought up to me, especially when they see the Pot games I put together. It sounds like one of the best options for a poker player out there, if you have any sort of brand or a lot of people, is to maybe put together your own private games once or twice a week. A lot of people have asked me, why don't I do this? Why don't I put together my own game and just play in my own game? Because I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people that want to play with me, or I know a lot of people that just want to have a good time, and they think that playing me has a good time, which is probably true, because I'm a lot offline. But I think that seems like a really great idea, and I don't know why I haven't thought about that ever. But do you ever think about doing something like that for yourself, where whether it's in a casino, or whether it works out a special deal with a different casino, or whether it's just in a private atmosphere sort of thing like that? Has it been something that you've considered before doing?
Yeah, I've kicked it around a lot, especially before I started playing super big, when I was more 5, 10, 10, 20-ish. But yeah, I don't know. I struggle with this because it's difficult. You want to be as fair as possible to the community. You want to do as much as you can to cultivate moving forward. I think that's kind of a small picture, self-centered approach, and that's totally fine, right? If you're living as poker and you're trying to eke it out, it's really good to do what you can. I know a lot of guys who have created these somewhat live private games or whatever, but the problem with that is it doesn't facilitate growth moving forward. It actually does the opposite. So I know in Florida, a lot of the 1025 games have gone private. Mm-hmm. That's really, really problematic, because now what's happening is now a lot of the good 5-10 and 10-25 players are being shut out of these private games, and it's forcing them to go to casinos and play smaller stakes. So if you're a 10-25 reg but can't catch a game because it's all moved private, and now none of these people are coming to the casino, well, now you have to go grind 5-10. And what that did is, rather than you being a level up and letting 5-10 naturally cultivate to where it is, you step down and immediately become like the top 1% of 5-10 players and just start pulling all the money. And that's really problematic, right? When people were staying at a stake or two lower than they're capable of playing for too long, they ultimately start to cannibalize that stake. And it's really easy to do in no limit, right? The mistakes are just punished to infinite degrees, especially when you're deep stacked in uncapped games, whatever the case may be. So literally just plucking out like the best or the 3 best or the 5 best players from a player pool can increase the growth of that game exponentially. And I really think that this is where a lot of this is lost in the live realm. I would love to see more of like some sort of more systematic approach to small stakes games that has like a natural funnel up. And casinos have kind of lost this because they're just not incentivized. They don't care about poker rooms. I don't know how we can, as a community, make them care. And I don't know how they, as a casino, can be incentivized to care either. But, they just have this like rake monkey game at 1-2 where nobody's really ever going to beat the rake and escape. And then 2-5 is just chock full of pros because the leap to 5-10 is way too big. And then there's only one 10-20 game in the entire city, and it's just filled with killers because 25-50 like ceases to exist at a public level anyway. It's all private now.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned a lot of things about, that was one thing I took away from being out in Los Angeles was how much, how many more just games it felt like at the different casinos out there were to play publicly, and then privately there seems like there's a lot of games as well with ridiculously high rake, of course. Yeah. But it does seem like the ecosystem in LA is so much different and maybe in a lot of ways better than it is here in Vegas too.
I think there's a simple reason for that, right? They're not full casinos. They are card rooms that also offer baccarat and whatever else. I guess 3-card poker maybe. But like largely speaking, they facilitate games for their clientele at all times, and they facilitate it at like a really high level where you could play almost anything. I remember at one point, Commerce had like 5-5. They had like 2-5, 5-5, 5-10, 5-10, and the buy-ins were all just like capped differently. Like the first 5-10 was like a 400 min max. And then the other 5-10 was like a 500 to 1500. So it's like the stepping process was so gradual between stakes, and they kind of removed the pride factor where it's like people don't have to worry about saying like, oh yeah, I played this stake or that stake or whatever the case may be. No, they just offer like reasonable rake with a lot of return in food and comps and stuff like that, and every stake imaginable up to 10-20. Now, a lot of people who reach 10-20 then get frustrated because now games may start to go private or there just isn't a big pool of players to choose from. But like that's okay. Like if 10-20 is the biggest game to ever run forever, there'll be a lot of people making a living at poker, and that's fine. And also, like I think we're going to see the blinds become less and less impactful, as it's just easy to manipulate some other detail, right? If we change the minimum buy-in to games, like so say 10-20 is the biggest game to ever spread, but the minimum buy-in is 300 big blinds and it's uncapped. That's a big game. That's going to play massive just due to human nature. Or it's just going to ruin the landscape altogether if the bots infiltrate it and realize like, oh, there's only $30 out there and I'm just not incentivized to raise anything but 3% of hands. It's like, yeah, sure. If everybody approached the game properly, that's exactly what would happen and it would end. But human nature says that that's not ever going to be the case. There's just always going to be people who are looking for different angles. And, guys like Garrett who understand how to facilitate an environment, add an ante or add a third blind or do a round of bomb pots, or basically anything that is going to change people's disposition and get them out of trying to play chess at all times, I guess. I think that we need to put a bigger emphasis on the psychological and personal aspect of poker if we have any intentions of growing it beyond what we see now. And I think that's really evident in MTTs. They just keep growing, and there's just no end in sight. And the irony is, like, it's such a simpler form of poker than cash, but the barrier of entry is really, really low. The ceiling is really, really high, and nobody is putting the work in to figure out how to quote unquote solve 1,000-man fields. Like, people are just pretty content with arriving at what they feel is really good poker and, miles ahead of the field, and just applying it. And then understanding, like, well, the variance is just really high because it's a 1,000-man field.
So it kind of sounds like you're saying that you think that people should probably pursue tournaments, and that might be the best, I guess, might be the best way for someone out there who wants to play more poker and wants to play in an environment that's going to keep growing and growing. That seems like you're saying it's a good option.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, like, that's the reason why there was a boom to begin with, and that continues to be what draws people into the game. Cash is, like, unfortunately, because it's where my heart lies, it's definitely gradually dying. Mm-hmm. And I just think that, like, the smartest people in the game need to kind of sit down collectively and figure out a way to promote cash games the same way tournaments are. And, decrease the barrier of entry, decrease the edge that the best player in the game will have. Because that's really the beauty of tournaments, is that no matter how good you are, and no matter how high your ROI is, you're still just one of X amount of players, and it's going to take a lot of volume to see that sort of return.
Yeah, I guess, like you mentioned, bomb pots were played at Live at the Bike, and I think that made the game really fun. But for the most part, ideas like that, I guess they're not. I mean, drinking might be some way to spice a game up potentially too. But outside of that, what other ideas out there have you seen, or have you sort of thought about that maybe, I guess someone who's playing in cash games could implement and try to make a game a little bit more exciting and reduce the edge of some of the best players in the game?
Yeah, I think things that, like, just create unconventional strategy adjustments. So, like, the bomb pots immediately, 6 or 7 people or 8 people or whatever are at a table where they haven't really worked out the strategy for this. Another thing that has become popular here in town is the button game, where basically so say you're playing like 10-20, somebody puts $100 on the button, or $20 on the button. And if somebody other than the person who posed, or if somebody other than the button wins the pot, they win what's on the button, and then it starts over. So, once it gets up to a reasonable amount of money, now you see this, like, war waging with the button and everybody else who's out to get this incentive or extra incentive of money. And, don't get me wrong, like, it won't take that long for people to adjust because people are just constantly studying, but it does throw, like, a monkey wrench in. And I think, like, facilitating, like, more round type games, even though I personally wouldn't want to play full ring PLO. I think that, like, it's a game where equities run super close, and it's why I think a lot of the fun players are moving that way, is because they can't get hurt that bad as long as they keep playing.
Right, they can't. That's a good point. Sean Pullman, actually, along that point, he says, how about a game called 4-Card Hold'em, where you have to use 2 of your whole cards and you can only bet the size of the pot? I think that sounds like a pretty fun game, Sean. I do have to admit, that sounds like a game that could
How about
work.
No Limit Omaha? I think that would be interesting.
So I played some No Limit Omaha online, and I have to say it's one of the worst fucking games I've ever played in my life, because what happens is you get some of these guys just start shoving on every hand, and while you might want that, at the same time, it's I don't know, man. Listen, there's this one reg who fucking plays an ACR I used to play with a lot at these tables, and he would just jam the button. That's all he would do. And he was shorter stack too. So it's like, I mean, it's not fun doing that. I don't know. But maybe it could be. I don't know. Maybe it could be something. Who knows, man? I don't know. Maybe I need to play more Nolan Omaha. And
yeah, I probably need to put a little more thought into it. But I think there are some like treacherous things that happen in live cash realms. Like, it's crazy to me that the minimum buy-in in most games is still 40 big blinds. It's like that's off of an old limit rule from like 2000 that just kind of grandfathered its way in when the boom hit in 2003 and has never been reevaluated. It's insane, right? It's like to be playing less than 100 blinds deep at this point is just kind of madness. And it also like really harms that gambling environment. If you do get into a loose, splashy game where it's playing significantly larger than the blinds would indicate, and you just have that guy who's just like waiting in the weeds jamming. We saw this happen in the first Live at the Bike game I played. There was a lot of guys sitting with like 5K, and we're playing 25, 50, 100 with a 200 ante. So, me, Ryan, and Garrett are like, we're really mixing it up. We're getting into 3 and 4 bets, and there's just somebody who like limp rips with aces for what's effectively like 30 blinds.
What was that guy's name? Big John. What was his name? What was that guy's name that did that?
Tatted Poker or something along those lines.
Tatted Poker King, was that his name?
Yeah. I got flamed hard for that. It's like I put in $5,000 pre where it was 25, 50, 100, 200 with a 200 ante that hand, and I had nines, and he only had $5,000. It's like he has 25 big blinds. What's the problem?
Pretty GTO spot for Huge Time. Huge Time. Yeah, shout out to Huge Time. Listen, first of all, that name's awesome. Your name's Huge Time. That's just a great fucking name to have for someone who plays poker. So, but yeah, I did see that. And, I haven't really thought too much about, I guess, raising them in buy-in. I do think that there are a lot of things that have been carried over, like PLO tournaments. It's just been the same exact format forever, when antes have been something that I think a lot of people said should probably be involved or have been included at this point in time. And I do think a lot of the ways that cash games have been set up, if they've been set up that way since online poker started, and probably even before online poker was even a thing. And I think it could, introducing some ideas would be good, whether it would raise that, we mentioned the barrier to entry earlier, whether it would raise the barrier to entry for a lot of other players out there who might want to otherwise try. I'm not sure, but I think at this point in time, there won't be that much harm in just trying some new ideas and trying some new things and kind of seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. And I think tournaments do that a lot, where they introduce new formats, new game types, new different, jackpot, or I don't really know what PokerStars does, but there's all these new sorts of things. They got the shot clock going in there now. That's kind of, picking up some popularity. So, and I do feel like cash games, for the most part, it's been the exact same thing for a long time, with the exception of maybe the PLO games that play with the rock, where when you win the pot, you end up straddle next hand, which I do think changes the game up a little bit. But yeah, I think it is pretty much the same exact thing it's always been. And I don't know. Yeah, it could be something where if you're out there and you have a poker room, or you have some sort of influence, maybe try to introduce some new ideas to the game, or introduce some new ideas to just sort of what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, something has to give. I don't think that the environment can currently stay status quo forever. But really, I think that if we just start to get the message out of having people give a shit about bigger picture concepts rather than just like self-preservation. And that's hard. That literally may just be a pipe dream, right? Because only the people who are good enough to overcome variance and the field constantly getting better and everything else can even take the time to think about bigger picture concepts, because everybody else literally is trying to survive. If there's maybe 5 to 10% of the community that's making all the money, and 50 to 80% of the community that's somewhere between being a small loser and a small winner, you can't expect that 50 to 80% to be the ones who are also facilitating in growth. You have to present them with the best options and just hope they understand what's best for them to move forward.
Kind of reminds me of something. A guy I know named Dr. Space. He is he always talks to me about trying to get a good ecosystem of the 5-10 games down in the Tampa Hard Rock down there, and he always talks about how can we build up this ecosystem? How can we build up the player pool? How can we make the games more friendly? How can we do all these different things? So I do think there are some people out there who really do want to cultivate an environment that, is trying to grow rather than trying to just, sort of, I guess, selfishly win as much money as they can. So I think there are some people out there who do look at it like that. And, kind of going back to Doug, we talked about initially, I do think ultimately that's what he's trying to do with, sort of what took place from last week. So while I was thinking, it sucks that, you two are sort of involved in this from my own personal standpoint. I think overall, I think it's kind of good it might have happened because it does draw awareness. And that's what I ultimately think he wants to do with that message he put out there, is he wants to grow this sort of environment of these higher stakes cash games and sort of change the way that they are, because the direction that they are going right now, it doesn't seem good for the future of them. And if more games get canceled, more things get canceled, then I think it's only going to keep getting worse and worse. And maybe at some point in time, we don't really have much higher stakes at all. And I think ultimately a lot of us really enjoy watching those higher stakes.
Yeah, I'll agree to disagree on what his goals are, I guess. Maybe that is his hope at the end of the day. It didn't feel that way. And it didn't seem like it was framed that way either, just in the sense that, I didn't really hear any good suggestions as to how we can possibly fix this, right? Like the whole idea of, if you made a commitment, then just show up. Well, that's easy to say, but again, it goes back to incentive. What incentive is there to do it other than to be a man of your word? Which, trust me, if anybody puts stock and value into, it's me. Like, I think that, especially in a community like this, your reputation and word is all that you. That's weird. I thought my ringtone was off. I think that's like all you can really rely on at the end of the day. But like, again, like stuff happens. And in a lot of instances, you're asked to commit to these games, sometimes super short notice, sometimes way out. A lot of variables change. When does it become acceptable, right? Like, when does it become acceptable to just say, like, this isn't a good spot for me any longer? And this goes for anybody, right? So for me, it was, I felt short-rolled for this particular spot. For somebody else, they might feel like they're a dog in the lineup. For somebody else, they just may not want to expose any information on stream. So, I think the bigger problem at large is, how can we make it a thing where we're able to promote poker to the masses without with a fair exchange between the promoter and the people being asked to play?
That's the $1 million question. Maybe it is lower stakes, or maybe it is, I don't know, maybe there is some sort of idea somebody might have out there that we just don't know about yet. And if you have an idea like that, get in touch with Feldman at Live at the Bike. Shout out to Ryan Feldman. Get in touch with Poker Central guys, Brent Hakes, or anyone else who works at Poker Central. And if you got an idea, give me the idea, because it could be something, that's really helpful to the community. So I guess, changing subjects here, I noticed in the background, and it's something I've been seeing in your Instagram stories. Are you working on is that a board? You've been painting, you've been drawing, or is that your brother that's doing that? What's the story behind this up in the background there?
Okay. So, my nephew graduated high school he graduated high school this past May. And, he's bright.
He looks like you, man. I think he's your brother, bro. I'm serious. I'm looking, I'm like, man, I like Burke and Berkey's brother. I forget he's not actually your brother, though.
To be fair, my sister looks like me, too. Very unfortunate for her.
Bang, bang.
But yeah, so he just graduated high school, and really smart, bright kid. I have all the faith in the world that he's going to have an amazing future. But he's a lot like I was whenever he was at that age, where it's just like, it's really tough to let go of being a big fish in a small pond. He graduated with, I don't know, maybe 100 kids, small town. And he just wasn't ready to go to school yet. He was dragging his feet, making a commitment, everything else. So I was like, why don't you take some time off, move in with me for a year. We'll do some traveling. I'll show you like the back end of the business, how we basically started from the bottom up. And he's really passionate about hockey, but to be fair, he's not really at collegiate caliber yet. So I was like, we'll just basically spend a year training. So yeah, that's pretty much like what we've been doing and what I've been doing in my free time. So yesterday he was like really had the urge to make vision boards, and I've been wanting to do this too for a while. I've always been kind of a proponent of this stuff, but I wanted to take a different approach to it this time. So it's more of a transparency board, if that makes sense. I basically, I don't know why. When I went to see Tony Robbins a couple days ago, and he just said a couple things that kind of stuck in my craw, where I just really wanted to create this board, like almost a way to exhaust like anxiety and negative emotions, and have that blatant reminder that like it's not that big of a deal and it's not any sort of harm. So Eric made this like sick vision board, and he's like the artist between the two of us. I don't know what I'm doing, but I just wanted to create like a board where I listed out all my fears, doubts, and insecurities, and just basically have it framed somewhere where I'd see it every day, and just slowly try to check them off the list, where it's like, this isn't that scary, this isn't that much self-doubt anymore, and I'm not so insecure about these areas.
Yeah, he's definitely an artist. I saw on the Instagram story, shout out to Berkey's Instagram story at Berkey11 on Instagram, of course, that his drawing was significantly better than anything I could ever dreamt about drawing myself. And then you sort of got in the lab a little bit, you went to work a little bit, and I actually thought yours was pretty good too, but it seems like some sort of wizard with drawing.
I'm okay at like looking at something and mimicking it as best I possibly can, but I'm not going to win any awards, that's for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the Tony Robbins thing, and that was something that you had invited me to go to, and I think I wanted to go, and then I started making YouTube videos about all sorts of crazy shit, and then I just kind of didn't leave the house for like 5 days, so that didn't work out. But it seemed like it was very. I mean, I always listen to all that Tony Robbins stuff, and people are very polarized about him. They either love him, they hate him. I personally really have always enjoyed listening to him. I think he is. I mean, I've watched the documentary on Netflix that he has. I've watched about how he sort of does things, and I mean, I love kind of his message overall. And people, I say a lot of people don't. But what was your sort of big takeaways from going to that networking event that you talked to me about? And I guess moving forward, are there things you took away that you can then implement immediately into your life?
Yeah, I'm somewhere in between. I love everything that Tony Robbins stands for. I hate, I guess, the big way that it comes out in implementation. And I don't think it's his fault. I just think it's kind of the nature of the beast. Like, if you want to make money doing what he does, you have no choice but to kind of pander to sheep. And that's frustrating to me because it comes off very evangelical or like culty almost. But I genuinely do buy into his or not buy into, I don't even want to frame it that way. I genuinely think he cares about the people that he's speaking to. And I genuinely think he's just trying to get like some sort of, I guess, message out there off of his own personal experience that can help a lot of people. The problem is that people who are looking for guidance go a little bit too far because they just, naturally speaking, human beings want answers to the unanswerable questions. It's a lot of reasons why people become devout in many areas of faith. And I feel like I was in a room with 11,000 people that he could have had walk off a cliff if he so chose to do so. And it was mind blowing to me. It was just crazy because like he has a really powerful message, but the problem is he could have gotten it out in 15 minutes and we had him for 3 hours. So the other 2 hours and 45 minutes was kind of just implementing that message, some of which were awesome and really impacted me in kind of a way. Like, I'm the type of person that I don't like to draw attention to myself, particularly in crowds. So like when it comes to things like dancing or, anything where it's like you feel like all eyes are on you, even when they're not, I get really, really uncomfortable. But it got to a point where, the entire room is jumping around like 6-year-olds and I'm the only one standing there. And now all of a sudden all eyes are on me for like the total opposite reason. So it's like, now I'm just giving into conformity and peer pressure. And it's like, I'm just becoming one of them and acting like an ass because it's the right environment to do so. And that was like kind of liberating, I guess, in some regards, but it also like shined a light on some of my own personal flaws, like just being a little insecure with not or potentially being the worst at something, right? I don't necessarily always have to be the best at something, but I think I get really, really insecure if there's a chance I'll be the worst at something, even if it means, something that I feel like I'm relatively good at. Like, I'm relatively good at basketball, but there are a lot of instances where I could be the 10th best player on the court. And that would make me not want to play. And it's happened to me before. I've walked in the gym and I've walked out because I couldn't find somebody in there worse than me. And that's a problem that prevents me from challenging myself. But yeah, it's like, I think he's fantastic. I think that like the sheep-like culture that tends to fall into that realm is frightening and a little problematic. And it's probably also like why I take issue with like Choice Center and stuff like that, because I think largely speaking, it's a really positive endeavor. But the problem is that there are too many people who don't think for themselves and are now massively becoming manipulated and reliant upon this entity forever.
Mm-hmm. So I guess after going through this experience, do you feel like, I kind of, whenever I read a book or I watch something, or if I try to find at least one thing I might be able to take away and then, directly start implementing into my life somehow, whether it's a mindset or it's an actual practical thing. And from going from that, is it maybe just drawing more awareness on certain things that you might be uncomfortable with and maybe trying to put more focus on getting better at those? Or is there something, I guess, maybe like a specific strategy implementation on how to do that? Or, was there anything like that you walk away from thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, from the entire conference itself, I learned a lot about just marketing, which is definitely a sore spot for me. So that was like really, really helpful. As far as like the Tony aspect of it and the motivation and things like that, I just think like, for me, and this is something that like I've always felt to be true, but I guess I've been more active with since my mom passed, and I've been putting more of a highlight on it. I just feel like, largely speaking, we tend to ignore mental health, and that is, the root of a lot of our societal problems. And it's just not that difficult to find information and begin to educate yourself. Like, information is the one thing that is readily available to us in the information age, right? So for me, it's just like being mindful that journey's really never finished. I've gone through it to certain levels and then got complacent. And I think this kind of like reinvigorated the idea of like wanting to go back and revisit like motivating factors, revisit, places where humans just tend to falter, and negative mindsets, and, the whole idea of not suppressing. I think like so much of what we're taught from childhood till we just finally crumble is suppression. It's don't talk about those things. That's embarrassing. Don't talk about those things. People will judge you. Just swallow your anger, swallow your transgressions, swallow all these things, and don't be open and honest to people, because they're just going to come back and drag you through the mud for it. And I think that's highly frightening. And we're seeing a lot of it now with like these Hollywood actors being accused of taking advantage of women, et cetera, where they've been victims for years and just didn't have the platform or courage to come out. And I think that, us as a whole, us as a society, informing individuals, whether it's starting young and teaching our children this, or just taking care of our own and pushing it through our family channels or our close circles, whatever the case may be. It's the first step to really raising awareness, and, just getting to a point where like people are genuinely good and want to help one another. So if we stop shining a spotlight on the way we can corrupt people through negativity, and instead like move into an area where we're actually building people up, right? It's not a competition to the bottom anymore. It's not a race to the bottom by stepping over people and squashing them beneath you. Instead, it's this like competitive thing where you're trying to raise and elevate everybody up to your level so that you can pass them by again. I just think that proves for a much more productive society. And I think you see guys like Elon Musk being mindful of that in every single approach that he takes. He makes all the money in the world because his big picture goals are to further society, not to make all the money in the world.
Hmm. So I guess with that said, it seems like poker would not be the optimal environment if that's something that you personally look to do, or that's something that you want to do. It doesn't seem like the poker world is a great place to be able to do that. But I know that is sort of what you set out to do with, with your business, Solve for Why, and your overall mindset. Do you ever think about, I guess, pursuing things outside of poker more seriously, and sort of maybe going after something that maybe has a larger scale impact in that area of things?
Yeah, for sure. First, I think poker is actually an amazing platform. It's kind of a microcosm of everything that's wrong with society, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. It's a zero sum game, not a negative sum game. And the fact that there is money at play, and there's emotions at play, and there's competition and all these other things, I think that there is a way to make this a healthy environment. And it's kind of like why I started there. This is what I know, and these are the things that I recognize in the community. I feel like I can do my best to continually push it in a different direction and help grow it a certain way. So yeah, I do think that at some point I'll pivot off, maybe more seriously, or at least I hope so, right? Again, like, I'm open to the idea that I'm just going to absolutely fall on my face and fail. But that's okay. There are a lot of other paths that will come off of that failure. Um, Ultimately, I guess, like, the difference between what I see in, like, Tony Robbins and what I aspire for is Tony Robbins will make $6 billion because he's the best speaker that you will ever come across in a generic room, right? So he will absolutely nail every single audience that he speaks to. You put him in a TED Talk and he will speak to the intellectuals. You put him in a room full of sheep and he will herd them into the right direction. For me, it's like I'm not good at the watering down process. I don't communicate well with people who aren't necessarily thinking on or don't aspire to the same things that I do, or at least aren't open to them. For me, it's like I feel like my best impact would be being able to address a bunch of other people who could be impactful, and then seeing the trickle down effect from there. So yeah, it's like I hope to someday do a TED Talk. I hope to someday, like, be able to command a room of people who are way smarter than me and way more impactful if they just have the right motivation. But I also think that that's true of the poker community. There's a fuck ton of them that are way smarter than me and have the ability to be way more impactful for me. If I can be the spark that lights their fire, that would just be like the biggest win in the world.
Sounds like a prop bet we can make. You have 12 months to do a TED Talk. What do you think? I mean, I don't know. Fedor, that seems like Fedor's on that route, so it's definitely possible.
Yeah. It's definitely possible. I'm very underqualified. It's the problem, where Fedor's not. And I don't necessarily mean in the sense that I couldn't speak. I think I could speak to a room quite well. I think that having 25 million in earnings gets way more attention than 4.
Yeah. The young Prince, Fedor Holzman. I don't know. He's on the talk grind. I think he's, like, doing a lot of talks now. He's really trying to get his brand out there in a more mainstream environment. And I predicted this years ago. I think the young Prince is going to end up running a country, or he's going to do something really special. I just remember thinking back to him, and I first had him on the podcast, and I'm not surprised it's come to this point. I think you meet some people and you're not surprised that they come to a certain point. And with him, I don't know. I'm not surprised to see what happens. He's still so young too. You think about it. I mean, me and you are pretty old, but Fedor's like, what, 22, 23, 24, something like that. So I can't imagine being that age and doing these type of things and having that type of success and just dealing with that all. It's got to be fun, overwhelming, challenging, a lot of things.
He's going to do incredible things. It's just a matter of which path he chooses, right? Like, it's going to be business, it's going to be finance, it's going to be philanthropy. Who knows? Like, if someday you found out that Fedor Holz was worth 500 million, a lot of us are going to be like, oh man, never saw that coming, right? It would be the day we found out Fedor was broke that would all be like, how? Yeah. And what's next? I can't wait to see how he's not broke, right? Because I just don't think he has the capacity to fail.
Yeah. Well, guys, let's take some questions from the chat here, and then I have to go do something to the back. I have to stomach acting me up very hard over these past 45 minutes. So I've been thinking about myself. I'm like, man, I should have been on my whatever. So what do you have planned here coming up here over this rest of the year? So we got what month and man, it's so crazy. It's November 20th. Holy fuck! But so you're playing Poker After Dark this week. Is that 2 days or 3 days? What's that look like?
It's today and tomorrow. Today and tomorrow, 200, 400.
Okay.
And then I'll play the 5 Diamond first week of December. We have our Elite Academy right after that,
nice.
Which is we do it once a year for people who have attended the academy. We take 9 people back and do a 5-day one instead of 3. And then gonna wrap with a charity stream on December 19th. So our last academy, we gave away 2 seats, and we asked people to send in videos with why they deserve the seat and what they would do to pay it forward, etc. And Andrew Piper was one of the submissions. Pretty impressive kid, has a vlog himself here in town. It's kind of like living out of his car right now because it's just practical. And it's kind of great. It's actually pretty crazy. But his pay it forward was he wanted to do something to shine a light and kind of help the families of the victims of the Route 91 shooting here in town. And for whatever reason, I was actually out of town when that happened, but it impacted me really, really, really hard. And I don't know why. I think maybe just like the proximity of the strip and, how many times I've actually been at the Aria when something went down. Like, I was playing whenever that car jumped the curb after the Miss Universe pageant or Miss America pageant or whatever, and we all thought it was a terrorist attack. And, it's just, I can't imagine being in that environment. I can't imagine being put in a position to actually fight or flight for your life. I was just pretty mortified by it. So basically everybody who didn't get a seat, we reached back out to, and the ones who had really good pay it forwards, we offered to help facilitate. So he took me up on it, and we're trying to organize all the vloggers in town now and have them promote it through their channels. And then we're going to do a live stream on the 19th from Sulphur Y headquarters. It's going to be a fun time. The money's going to go to the Route 91 families. Going to try to get some fun characters in there. Maybe get a little drop in from you on the mic. Have you do a little commentary if you're not busy.
If I'm in town, I'm going to be there for sure. And I think you mentioned his name. It's Bike King 19. He's been in the chat the entire time here. So if you want to check out his vlog, you can click out his name on here, go search on YouTube, and you can find that on there and learn more about him. It seems like there are a lot of vlogs picking up out there, and vlogging is certainly growing and growing and growing. And I encourage everyone out there, if you want some extra accountability and motivation, start a blog, start writing about it, because there's no better way to provide that sort of accountability to yourself than to put it out there for the public. And I think it's something that helped me a long time ago, and probably would help me now if I did more of it. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like you got a pretty good schedule here planned up, and it sounds like you have a little bit of high stakes. You have a little bit of business with the Sulphur Y. You got a little tournaments with the 5 Diamond, and of course cash games that'll come from around that. So overall, it sounds like you have a fun rest of the year planned. You're going to be doing vlogs yourself too. I know you've done a bunch of vlogs for Sulphur Y, and you've done different ones in different places. Are you going to plan to do more of those this year?
Yeah, we've been trying to release every 10 days, but unfortunately Thanksgiving tied up our editors. So we won't have one this week, but we're going to get one out next week and then maybe turn right around and do another one pretty quickly. But yeah, we'll probably put 3 to 5 more out before the end of the year, just depending on how the holidays work out. That's actually been a ton of fun. I'm surprised. I really didn't think I would enjoy it. I hate, like, same thing with the whole dancing thing. I can't stand like being in public and turning a camera on myself. It just makes my skin crawl. I just, there are certain things that I lack a little bit of confidence in, and shoving a camera in someone's face or my own is certainly one of those arenas.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I mean, while I am on the camera, the idea of like walking around with the camera in your face, I've tried it a few times. I feel so weird. So
yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's a very strange thing. So let me look at the chat here. We got a lot of names in there, guys. But like I said, we'll be back on Wednesday, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern time with young Vivian Saliba. You can check her out on Instagram if you don't know much about her. Plays Potland Omaha tournaments. and that'll be fun. Tomorrow I got another video coming. I've been doing a lot of new videos on my YouTube channel, guys. If you haven't seen them, go check them out. First one's called When You Want to Drive Off the Bridge. Second one, State of Online Poker's Fucked Up. Third one's Feeling Like a God versus Death. And fourth one has been One Big Hand Defines Your Poker Session. So make sure you guys go check those out. I think I've been getting a lot of good feedback on those. And yeah, I'm putting out a video tomorrow. Actually, Matt, I'll talk to you a little about this, then we'll wrap it up. But it's so funny because have you ever taken Vyvanse? Have you taken Adderall before? Have you ever taken anything like that?
No, caffeine. I'm a pretty big caffeine fan, but yeah, I don't take anything.
So I was looking up how to deal with the brain fog that comes from having a sort of come down to the next day effect from taking Vyvanse. And then I came upon, this is gonna sound crazy people out there, but most people take these for ADHD, and I've never looked into it, honestly. I took when I was younger a bit, but I never knew what ADHD did or what impact it has on you, what it makes you feel like or think or whatever. And I was looking up different things that talked about how to get rid of this brain fog that comes with it. And I came across the Reddit subforum for ADHD. And I read one of the first thread in there, and I was like, holy fuck, this thing is literally describing my entire life and what I've thought about, what I've struggled with in terms of just like the memoryness, the forgetfulness, the memory sort of like just random like losses of things. And there's there's probably like 10 to 20 different things that I talked about that I was like, wow, this is exactly me. And I had no idea. I would just try to figure out what's wrong with me and why am I like this and why can't I do these things and why do I struggle with this and that. And it was one of the biggest realizations I think I've had this entire year. And I'm gonna make a video about it tomorrow, talking more about it. But I just found this out last night. And like I said, it sounds crazy because I do take the medicine from time to time. I take the Vyvanse, but it was just wild to think about like, oh, wow, this answers a lot of these questions about why I felt like this, but I'm not necessarily sure on what the solutions are to get better at that. So in a way, it gives me hope, but at the same time, it takes away some hope too. So it's going to be interesting to follow up on. And you kind of mentioned the whole entire mental health subject, and I feel like that's that sort of ties in with it a little bit.
Yeah, I actually want to research like Adderall a lot more. The little that I know, I think that, and this is just my opinion, I don't know enough about it to like disclaim it completely, but it seems like it's a really subtly dangerous drug. And I say subtly because it's not going to kill you. But it does seem like there are a lot of adverse effects to it. And I need to understand it better. I need to understand like the way that it deals with like brain chemistry and things like that, because just knowing a few people who are pretty kind of hung up on it, it seems like it's having a negative impact in their life. And for the most part, like they've been on it the majority of their life, right? They got diagnosed ADHD at some point, and this was the cure. But from what I can tell, like that's kind of largely been debunked as a real thing. And I'm sure, without knowing more about it, there are probably better solutions to people who are just like hyper or lack focus or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But I do get it because like we're talking limitless drugs and things like that. My topics, just something is it's like a lock-in for me.
Is it lagging for anybody else? Maybe it's just me. Is anybody else getting lag right now?
Did I die? Am I gone?
It was lagging a little bit. I don't know if it was me or if it was you, though. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm hardwired in, so hopefully it's not me.
Yeah, it's probably me. Who knows?
But yeah, it's just like, when I take caffeine, I feel like completely locked in and my focus is just like 100% there. So, I don't know. I understand the incentives to be on these types of things. And I think I kind of like respect the dangers. I'd be curious to see like more information on all of it.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up here because I feel badly. And I don't know what's wrong with my stomach lately. I need to take some sort of medicine for my stomach to clear this fucking thing. I've never really had this before. So, guys in the chat, Valerie Carney, Game Theory 101, John Smith, Yuck Yuck, EVD, Sean Pullman, Adam Westcott. They said it's Berkey Internet. Oh, okay. Berkey's Internet needs Adderall. Maybe it does. So, but yeah, guys, I'll be back later tonight. I'm Autoline at the Bike Show, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the Live at the Bike Twitch and YouTube channel. If you want to follow Berkey, You can check him out on Instagram at Berkey11, on Twitter at Berkey11 as well. His YouTube channel, it's Solve for Why YouTube channel, right?
Yep.
Okay. Solve for Why YouTube channel puts a lot of videos out there, vlogs that are going to be coming up here over these next bunch of months. Tonight, he's going to be playing 200-400 on Poker After Dark and a cash game tonight and tomorrow. You can check that out as well. And I don't know, man. That's it, guys. Appreciate all the comments. Appreciate all the questions in the chat today. Estonia, Jesus, Dubai, Vlad, Alec, Horgan. And yeah, Bike King says like, comment, subscribe. Yes, like, comment, subscribe. Exactly. Like, comment, subscribe. Exactly. So, Matt, I appreciate you coming on, my friend. We'll talk very, very soon. Everybody in the chat, much love. Adios. See you guys.
Thanks for having me.
Adios, guys. See ya.